India has begun standing up to China. Now let's look at some recent not so unconnected events that suggest it's not going to be business as usual with Xi Jinping in Modi 3.0. Now let's start. On the 4th of June, President Lai Ching-Te of Taiwan congratulated Prime Minister Modi on the NDA's electoral victory. Prime Minister Modi acknowledged the greetings the next day. China protested at this exchange of greetings because it considers Taiwan to be a breakaway province. But importantly, President Xi Jinping is yet to congratulate Prime Minister Modi on his victory. On the 19th of June, a US congressional delegation visited Dharamsala and met His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Former US Speaker Nancy Pelosi, no friend of China's, was one of the leaders who met the Dalai Lama. She launched a scathing attack on President Xi, saying that Xi Jinping would be forgotten, but the Dalai Lama's legacy would live forever. And on the 20th of June, Prime Minister Modi met this very same US congressional delegation. Join the dots. India has begun to stand up to China in Modi 3.0, but how will China respond? Joining me to discuss this are Dr. Vijay Page, founder-director of the Brahma Research Foundation, Dr. Tilak Jha of the Bennett University, an expert on China, and the studio with me is my colleague Deepak Bhadana. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Dr. Page, I want to start by asking you this. The Modi government has signaled continuity in foreign policy and national security. Dr. S. Jaishankar continues as foreign minister. NSA Ajit Doval continues as well in his third term. Changes do you see in our policy towards China over the last couple of days? I mean, it's unprecedented that a US delegation would be hosted in India, allowed to meet the Dalai Lama, and they make the kind of statements that they do. What kind of response can we expect from China based on this? There have been some comments from the Chinese Foreign Ministry protesting this statement, but is there something further down the line to suggest that there could be some kind of reprisal from China, and how is India going to react to that?
Well, I believe the process of standing up to China has been there for quite a while. Even before the swearing in took place, we know that the government of India issued a list of 30 locations in Tibet.
Right.
In response to what the Chinese had done for the Arunachal Pradesh by naming 30 cities. I think that day we declared to the whole world that we are going to respond in every possible manner to, so to say, the aggressive policy of China. Now, going a step ahead, today we find that on Monday, this incident of Filipino ship being intercepted by the Chinese has taken place. We have just given a response to it in the diplomatic sector. But we are also absolutely on guard as to what is going to happen next, because we have the US elections.
Yes.
Honor. The delegation's visit from the current government indicates that the current government is also going to be, current government in the US is also going to be on the aggressive mode.
Yes.
Consider the fact that the Trump, the hardliner, is around the corner. So I think in all fairness, it appears that they are veering to our side. The discussions and the tone of the EU talks where G7 was represented and our Prime Minister went there, the kind of bonhomie shown, also the signals that were given to China in that program indicate that there would be an all-round appreciation of the hard line that we are going to take. But we have to be on guard because our long border with China is porous at various locations.
Yes.
And we are aware what they are doing in the Ladakh east and western area, and so also in Taiwan and other sectors. Right. So obviously, before the US elections take place, there will be further attempts, not only in the South China Sea and in the Taiwan region, but across our border. So on guard, as they say, that's the slogan.
On guard indeed. With China, one can never be any other position, Deepak, you have to be on guard always. But I want to ask Dr. Tilak Jha this. Dr. Jha, do you see a radical shift in India's policy vis-a-vis China, given the statements that have been coming out, the way the Prime Minister reacted to the Taiwanese president's greeting, and the fact that today he met the US congressional delegation that has just come back from a meeting with the Dalai Lama?
There are two other developments, at least, which we also need to take note of. First, that the Prime Minister went for a meeting at the G7 summit.
Yes.
India has become more of a regular attendee of this thing, and I think there are talks now, India being among the largest economies of in the G7 countries as well. We are the fifth biggest economy, I think. By the end of 2024, 2029 for sure will be fourth biggest economy. So that is on the card. Second thing, we also had an NSA level dialogue.
Yes.
So we just had this thing, and I think among others, this dialogue has possibly happened earlier as well. But the most important fact is that India-US coming closer on the critical technology dimension. So that reassertion is the context in which this Dalai Lama visit, Nancy Pelosi, and the return thing is also happening. India and US also have some synergies together as far as Tibet issue is concerned.
Yes.
India in recent years has not shown a very great inclination towards sort of mentioning one China policy in the joint state. There have been reluctance on that front too. So putting all these things together, I think we can say for sure that there is already a radical shift in India's policy towards China. It's just that we are reasserting that, we are making sure that we are standing firm on the issue. And I think the way things are, there is no further dramatic shift. We are staying the course. There is no sign that India is backing off of sorts. India is standing firm, not just here, but I think we are also upping the ante as far as our relationship with Taiwan. As you pointed out, the Prime Minister had an interaction with even if through Twitter, it's still significant. The Chinese definitely took note of it.
Yes.
We have also upped the ante as far as naming of some portions in Tibet is concerned. So we are fairly upping the ante. We are not lowering the guard. And I think we are very much alert. You would have also heard about the developments in Great Nicobar Island, although there are environmental concerns for sure.
Right.
But that's also the point where the Malacca Strait, the Malacca dilemma of China, we are getting to exploit
Absolutely.
that portion.
India upping the ante and certainly not lowering the guard. But Deepak, could there be consequences to this? Well, how will Xi Jinping respond? I mean, he is the leader, let's not forget, who doesn't forget nor forgive.
I mean, China's first response has been, asking everyone to respect its core interests.
Yes.
Now, that's a classic case of Chinese doublespeak. They would ask others to respect their boundaries while ignoring everyone else's.
Right.
Now, the way you see this situation, it is one would see that it is entirely of China's making.
Yes.
Despite countless overtures on part of India, Mr. Jinping has not deigned to reciprocate.
Yes.
So I think they know what to expect, and anything that comes out of China, I think, what can really happen? I mean, we already have border issues with them.
Yes. What's the worst that can happen, you're saying?
Exactly.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's like after 2020, you have two Chinese divisions staring down at you from eastern
There are close
Ladakh.
to about 90,000 Chinese soldiers on the border.
Absolutely. We have not seen this kind of border deployment in several decades now, at least 4 decades. Dr. Page, your Brahma Research Foundation, you look very closely at the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea with a specific focus on China's grey zone tactics. And we just witnessed a few days back the visuals of these that the Filipino military released, that pictures showing the Chinese Coast Guard personnel brandishing knives, swords, spears and axes. One was reminded of what we faced in Galwan, and the Philippines is facing the same thing in the South China Sea. Tell us, if given the proximity between India and Philippines is the first overseas customer of the BrahMos missile, the supersonic missile that India makes, and we exported it to the Philippines recently. Do you see India and Philippines, and indeed other countries that are at the receiving end of China's bullying, coming together in some kind of informal arrangement?
Well, that could be a possibility, but I believe that the Western powers, including the United States, has to play a dominant role to support this initiative. For example, we launched Quad.
Yeah.
But we always say that Quad is only purely, it's
It's
not
a talk shop, yes. Yeah.
Exactly. It is not army. It is not navy. It is not. Because had that been the case, I believe what they did in the Second World War.
Yes.
It was Lend-Lease case, that all the British equipment was bought from US on a lease basis.
Yes.
You know that if they wanted to bolster our navies, they would certainly have moved. And even now it is not late. So I think the Chinese are still watching how far would the US go in this collaboration.
Right.
We have signed up on Quad. We are having almost one exercise a month, either in the Indian Ocean or at the Antarctic, as we did recently. So we are trying to bring not only Southeast Asian, but the Southeast Asian, European, and the US allies to form a front. And we are getting familiar with their defense equipment, familiar with working together to give an impression to China that neither are we alone, nor are the other Southeast Asian countries alone. As you know, we hold aircraft base for the Singapore because they have no place for the F-16 takeoff. And our collaboration with Philippines will even go beyond the Brahmos. They are looking at other pieces. So I'm sure we are definitely making a move in that direction, bringing it together. Our answer of to the necklace by the diamond pearls that we set up is an effort. Our Nicobar port, where an international boat terminal and will support the Andaman defense facility is being developed. I'm sure we are making all efforts, but we have to keep in mind the fact that the rapid rise of Chinese Navy has risen some doubts, and the kind of coalition that you need to put up to such a bull in the China shop has not yet happened. The faster it happens, the better the signal would go very clearly to the Chinese that we mean business, and if anyone is attacked or any limits are crossed, we will all come together as one and give a response. That feeling has to happen, and for that, both the Americans, whatever forum that they have formed, have to convert themselves into a stronger coalition. That's what I believe.
A stronger coalition. Dr. Tilak Jha, you believe that coalitions or talk shops like the Quad can actually become something more than that? They can become some kind of an informal military alliance as is being hinted at, or is this just going to continue as is with every country left to fend for themselves? The smaller ones, of course, remain in the umbrella of the US. The other countries, bigger countries like us, which have long borders with China, have to fight our own battles. You see some kind of informal alliance of countries that are at the receiving end of China's bullying coming together?
You see, I mean, when you talk about, you rightly mentioned the term umbrella. It's interesting what umbrella actually does even in a rain. Now there is a storm. So in a storm, if you carry an umbrella, the most that can happen is that possibly it will save you, but it will still drench. That's what's happening. Talking of Quad or other regional partnerships, I think we also need to see the framework in which Quad exists, and for that matter, other treaties exist. This is a world in which economy takes precedence over other concerns. So you don't have just a Quad, and Quad for that matter, it has to be far more than a sort of military alliance. It has to come stronger on the economic front, on the front of countering China's Belt and Road Initiative, offering a real alternative to something like RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. There has also been some reluctance in ASEAN, and I think in recent issues about Philippines, or for that matter, many other disputes that China has with smaller countries. We often see that we have support coming from European Union, we have announcements coming from G7, but you don't have any announcement coming from ASEAN. For that matter, I think the Chinese Premier who was in Malaysia, the statement that they gave, among others, was that, well, fair enough, when it comes to South China Sea and other such disputes, countries should be dealing with China mutually or bilaterally. So there is no such momentum coming up. So what do we see for that matter? I think Quad, again, China knows that China knows for that matter how to sort of manage it, how to not really get into a major war as such, and sort of keep creating small hurdles and creating issues which will basically make it manageable without letting. Now, if you see for that matter, couple of days ago, there was a military exercise in the South China Sea, the Philippines and the US among others, and 2 days after the Chinese come and stop a Philippine vessel. Now, what do? Do you take all the entire fleet once again to counter China? Do you invoke the 1951 treaty? What do you do? So China does know the limits. The Chinese strategy is very, very clear in this fact.
Yeah.
And I think there are other aspects which I also pointed out. You have economic development. China is the biggest trade partner of almost every next country in its entire periphery, including ourselves. Yes. Well, America and China, there's not much difference. In a couple of years, it has been America, but primarily China remains a major player. And of course, there is Chinese major role which comes up in agriculture sector, infrastructure sector, and physical and digital infrastructure. These are all mining for that. South China is here for that, and most of the disputes needs to be seen that, well, it's not just a territorial dispute, it's also a dispute about seaways, about mining, about natural resources. Now, how do you counter all of it? In the long run, the comprehensive battle which is shaping up, yes, it's not just going to be shaped by war. It has to be looked at as an economic thing. There is a cultural dimension of it. There is a digital and, of course, other infrastructure related to it. And that's how we can approach this issue. Otherwise, there is little that a faraway power can come and sort out such minor issues which keeps coming up, and the Chinese keep just raking up.
Right, absolutely. There's a comprehensive battle, as Dr. Tilak Jha mentioned, Deepak, the fact that the US cannot be involved in too many fronts. It's already got its hands full. It's looking at West Asia, it's looking at Ukraine, Europe, the Russia-Ukraine war, and this is the potential possible third front that could be opening up. Is there a limit to the number of places that the US can keep its eyes on?
At least that's what the people or the allies, purported allies of the US, this is one of the primary concerns, and I think it's warranted. India in any case has always been, very wary of accepting any such partnership.
Right.
Our past 60, 70 years, we've been non-aligned for the most part, and even today, there is a strategic wariness when it comes to, say, becoming a formal ally of the US.
Yes.
So India is very much looking to find its own course, and as Mr. Page was talking to us, we've not really seen the signs as to the extent to which the US is willing to go. So I think it's on part, it's for the US to show and demonstrate, right, the degree to which it will help.
Right. US will need to demonstrate the degree to which it will help. So far it's been a lot of mutual assistance, exercises, military hardware.
I mean, India's wary of being caught in a proxy conflict.
Yes, yes. How do you, Dr. Page, how do you not get into a proxy conflict at the same time stand up for your rights? I think New Delhi is very wary of being caught into somebody else's war, given the fact that you have this huge land border, unresolved land border with China, over 3,400 kilometers. How do you tread this line? By standing up for your rights at the same time not getting drawn into somebody else's conflict, not being instigated by another country.
Well, the economic and the military sides, though they look separate, ultimately they merge into one, yes, as a national security issue. Because economic and financial security as well as national security are all one and the same. So they eventually merge into one. So while we are talking about likely conflicts with China and their interests, we must realize that they are our largest trading partners.
Yes.
And over the years, the imports are on the increase. We have certainly moved in some direction, like the semiconductor complexes which are coming up, like the EV battery production facilities which are coming up. Also, the direct route for supplies to Europe, the new pathway that we set. But I believe we need to look at something bigger that is happening on the global scene. For example, take a look at the Russian dialogue with China, yes, for supply of gas and petroleum. They are thinking of a pipeline. Now, please look at the geographical map. The shortest line follows the old Silk Route.
Yes.
It is very closer to India. If Russia, with whatever collaboration that we have, gives us a tap of the same line, then China is bound to us in a fashion. They cannot jump very hard. Look at what happened in Ukraine and Russia case.
Yes.
All Russian gas was being supplied to Europeans.
Right.
So despite their anger against the Ukraine aggression, nothing could be done. Their trading continued, and our external affairs minister said that they are dealing 2 times or 3 times larger than what the Indian government is dealing with them.
Yes.
So that kind of a highly strategic move, we have to visualize and undertake that. So their dependence on continued positivity or nullifying what they do elsewhere starts building up,
Right.
be it the gas pipeline following the Silk Route, be it our economic strength that is coming up, semiconductors, and a continued effort to build the borders as we are doing, even at a slightly faster pace, because the kind of infrastructure that the Chinese have built is far ahead.
Yes.
We are wrapping up rapidly bridges and tunnels and so on and so forth. The strike commands are increasing in number. That needs to be expedited. So economic power, as Roosevelt had said, you talk about peace with a very long stick in your hand. That
Right.
will happen.
Right.
That economic stick our government is trying to build up, it has to build up at a faster pace, and some more strategic moves like the gas pipeline dependence of China, which is going to happen shortly, but the pipeline comes near our borders. So anything goes wrong, we are on the same supply chain. That's
Right.
what I believe.
Yeah, so you're talking of interdependencies that could potentially avert conflict with China, and the fact that China has a $100 billion plus trade with India, that should be one such lever. But Dr. Jha, the world as we speak, the world seems to be cleaving into 2 separate blocks. One is the US-led Western bloc, and you have the China-led concert of states like Russia, North Korea, Iran, and of course China is one of the biggest economy in that. Do you think India will be forced to, at some point, choose between one of these blocks? We are right now in the middle. We are following a policy of multilateralism. We are engaging multiple countries. Russia is a close ally and China is an adversary, but at the same time you have very large trading surpluses with China. It's a very complicated world that we live in, Deepak. It's not black and white anymore. It's a grey world. How does India negotiate this in the next 4 or 5 years of Prime Minister Modi's tenure?
Well, I think the honeymoon period of international relation as far as dealing with major powers is concerned for India.
Yes.
That seems to be definitely in a very challenging situation. We have the major powers at heads on, I think, as you pointed out. We are heading towards some form of new Cold War. It's not entirely a Cold War, but I think we also see certain restraint. In case of Ukraine situation as well, we do see a reluctance to not let it into a full-fledged war. Precisely this is the concern, and this is the point where provides us also some negotiating strategy. I think what we also saw in the G20 is that G20 was India's success for sure. We did a fantastic job of getting everybody along. There was also a need for the Western powers to get Global South on their side.
Yes.
And India definitely happens to be one of the key players which understands West's concern as much as it tries to get into the game of being the leader of the Global South. So that space has definitely widened. We are a far bigger economy, almost 4 trillion. So our leverage has grown up. We also have a diversified defense industry and economy today. We are a major trade partner of several countries from Europe and of course America and China is definitely there. So these are the leverages we have gained. And I think this is significant. Even in this war, the statement that came from our foreign minister about oil supplies which come from Russia, about what we buy in months, Europe buys in
1 afternoon. Yes.
Yeah, in an afternoon. So these are also justifications which gives us leverage. So we are assertive. We are a powerful country today compared to what we are. And this space is definitely growing. also we have to keep in mind that the world needs some form of decoupling. They cannot decouple from China. It's impossible for any country, but some form of decoupling, realignment of supply chains. And that is where India's headspace is going to grow. It's not going to become less.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I think we'll be able to somehow balance this middle space. I think this space will grow further rather than less.
The space will grow further indeed. And yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Page, Dr. Tilak Jha, and my colleague Deepak Bhadana. The space for India continues to grow in this world, this uncertain world that we're dealing with. But for the moment, it's India that's pushing the triggers, the two T's that China is extremely sensitive about, Tibet and Taiwan. How is this going to play out? We'll know in the months ahead.